Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. And today I am joined by guest Prashant Bellad. Prashant, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So before we get started, for folks who haven't heard your name before, could you tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name is Prashant, and my niche is software QA testing. I've worked in this industry for 18 plus years. And for last 4 years, I have been like helping SaaS owners to eliminate QA pains. And before that, for 14 years, I have been like working with multinationals like British Telecom and Morgan Stanley. And with that experience, I'm bringing that to the startup world so that we can have more world-class products for the masses.
Great. Oh, I love it. Okay, so a question came up in Slack that I've got here written down. Let's see. Here's the question or the story. You wrote, we perform ongoing QA activities like testing, creating automated tests, breaking the app, etc. We do the above for requirements that are planned per 2 weeks iteration/sprint. For the current client, I have been billing like an average of 200 hours per month based on the features to test. Some of the feature testing does get complicated in the same month and a few are carried over to the next month. I can't estimate what features my team would test in the coming month, hence I am not able to derive a success metric. Can you please suggest how to calculate a success metric for this situation so that I can move to value-based pricing month-on-month basis? Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here that I wanted to, that were a little nuanced and tough to answer in Slack. So here you are on the show, so we could talk about it. Is there any, do you think that's sufficient background, or is there any more that you would add?
I think that is sufficient, unless you have any like questions on that.
No, I think I've got the picture.
Okay.
So a couple of points come to mind. The first one is that on a month to month basis, when it sounds like the scope is sort of fluctuating, I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be doing value pricing every month for an ongoing, whatever you want to call this. It's sort of like, it's a little bit like, well, I don't know. You could call it a bunch of different things. I mean, you're doing implementation type stuff, but it's on the QA side, so it's not like you're building features. So it's a little bit like implementation, a little bit like a productized service, a little bit like a retainer. It's a lot like an insurance policy. So in one sense, I wouldn't set, if you were going to value price an engagement like this, I wouldn't do it on a month to month basis. I would deliver the service on just ongoing way, but I would set a success metric for a project. So in this particular engagement, is there some upcoming release or like a particular milestone that could be reached that you were brought in to help them achieve? Or is it just like they're just going to keep having you do this forever?
Right. So these both cases which you just identified, it is true. So there are times when there is a very well planned release, right? But like 50-70% of the times, it does happen that those releases can get stretched. Okay, right. What I mean by that is that like most of the like startup companies for whom I have been working, I've seen this issue where they have problems right from the requirement stages. Then the things get on delayed, and when it comes to the actual QA testing team, the where me and my team come into the picture, we have to do a lot of rework. Okay, and this rework cannot be easily estimated or perfectly estimated. So for some of the companies or some of the projects, it could be like we are retesting 3 times. In fact, I had an experience a few months back where we retested what, like 15 or 16 times. So that's this spectrum of the rework. So as you said, it the work just keeps on going for weeks and probably for few months,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for companies which are like have well planned requirements, right? So there it is not an issue for them if say like 30th October is the release date, then it's a release date. They will make it happen. And or there or for such type of projects, yes, I can say that I'm in more control of estimating the project or the things, and probably derive a number,
Mm-hmm.
but not in the other way. And in startup world, like 70 or 80%, it is a bit chaotic
Mm-hmm.
unless and until you're working for like Meta or Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Okay, so it sounds like what I'm interpreting from that is that when you say for the companies that have good requirements set up at the beginning, you can do an estimate of how much work it's going to be in a reasonably accurate fashion that would allow you to give a fixed price. Is that correct?
yes, that is correct, like theoretically, but what defines that everything is in order? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens? The product owner or the one who writes the requirements, they said the requirement what they have written are sufficient. But as the development phase come into the picture, so
Mm-hmm.
with each passing day, people realize, okay, no, this is not working, this is missing, or even this cycle happens during the testing phase as well. Uh, uh, so, uh, so, so, uh,
Okay, so what you're telling me is that there's uncertainty, and it's so much uncertainty that around the scope that
yeah,
you're uncomfortable committing to a particular price for it.
yeah. So, in the startup world, like I have like one or two clients who are very very particular, and these clients have their own products, but the difference which I've seen is that these founders or owners, they have come up come from like working at established MNCs or firms where they have gone through the experience
Mm-hmm.
of planning things in a better way. So
Mm-hmm.
so those are like easy customers for me, where probably I can like do value based pricing, but not for other founders who doesn't have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Probably that's the
Sure.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's an approach is to just work with ideal buyers.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like finding enough of them is a trick, but they're so much easier to work with that it allows you to do your best work more easily and not be sort of thrashing with someone who's not seasoned and is just throwing spaghetti against the wall trying to see what sticks. So that, I mean, one approach would be to niche down on a particular, a seasoned target market. So like people who have experience, but leaving that aside, what we're really talking about here is that there's too much uncertainty. You feel like there's too much uncertainty to give a fixed project price for some of these scenarios. And when I hear that, usually the general advice doesn't work in every case, but the general advice is to do a road mapping phase first, or some kind of paid diagnostic, where in the sales interview you determine whether or not the buyer, the startup founder, whoever, you determine whether or not they are one of these organized experienced types or one of these disorganized inexperienced types, and you suggest the appropriate next step. So, I have some students who refuse to work with anyone without a paid diagnostic first. Like even if in the sales meeting they're like, you might not need it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And if you don't want it, then we're not going to work together. So that would be what, and what's the point of that? The point is to reduce uncertainty so that you can give them a better quote for the project. Another thing that's popping into my mind is that you're clearly basing it sounds pretty clearly that you're basing your prices on the scope and not on the value currently, even with these organized founders that have the product people who have a disciplined approach. because you wouldn't care about the scope if you were worried more about the value. The scope would come later. You wouldn't worry about that in the pricing phase, which is kind of mind blowing for most people. But let me ask this question. Okay, let's start here. Have you explored doing road mapping with any clients, like doing a paid diagnostic or report or some kind of QA plan or architecture or something like that, which would maybe take you, generally these sorts of things take 10 or 20 hours, really anywhere from 5 to 20 hours across the course of 2 to 6 weeks. And you just charge X dollars for it, 2,000, 5,000, whatever. And you would meet with the stakeholders. You would probably look at code. You would probably meet with maybe lead developers or the CTO or something and come up with a plan that was customized to their actual situation. Have you ever done anything like that or tried that? Or how does it sound?
I haven't done it this way at all, but definitely this is an interesting approach. I would love to at least try it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would help quite a bit. Then the next question I have is when someone comes to you, even the sort of disorganized, anybody, right? Like, what is the biggest problem that they have? Like, why are they even spending an hour talking to you? They must be experiencing some kind of pain. What is that pain, and how do they describe it in their words?
Okay, from QA perspective, definitely the pain which I have been hearing is that they don't want their end user or their end customers catch the issues. Okay, so 50% of the customers come with these type of pains, and they first approach me for like, are you available to do some manual testing, or are you available to do some automation testing, convert the manual scripts to an automated suite, so that all the issues can be catched before it goes to production.
Okay.
Right. So I have two challenges. First is, okay, to understand this in this pain, and pain of not getting the bugs, like not getting the bugs reaching the end customer. And
Mm-hmm.
second is, I have to like make them aware that just doing manual testing well, or just doing an automation testing, so doesn't solve your problem. It is an
Mm-hmm.
end-to-end problem, right from the requirement stage till the feature is released to the production. So
Mm-hmm.
so this is the way I actually try to tackle the problems.
Okay, so you must have some confidence, though, or tell me, I presume you have some confidence that even manual or automated testing that is bolted on after the feature is in production, or the software is in production, it would reduce bugs somewhat, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. It will reduce bugs somewhat. For example, say if a product has say 12 or 10 bugs in their critical flow. Okay, so what I mean by critical flow in an application is all the critical functions of which provides the end user the actual value of the product for
Mm-hmm.
which that end user has paid for. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that would be one. Second would be the sign up and setting up the account for the customer, and third is any payment interfaces or payment transactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have actually reviewed quite a few products, and I've seen that they have like multiple issues in this flow. It won't be like showstoppers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still these are issues which the end customer can also easily see. But the quality process is so poor and weak, they cannot prioritize fixing those issues, right? Because already they have such so many issues to tackle with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, uh, so so to answer your question, by automating the manual tests, I can reduce these 6 to 8. So anyone can reduce the 6 to 8 issues to say 3 or 4 or two, but still you have those 2 or 3 issues which can impact your in the end the revenue of the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and and that is not the goal of the founder. Obviously, founder wants to have a world class product, wants to provide world class product experience. So
Well,
so
let's press pause right there, though. So
yeah.
it's kind of like security. There's no 100%. So, right, it's a question of resources and how much, there at some point it has to be good enough. So, and a founder is going to understand that. They might not want that, but they are going to, if you presented them with, let's say you presented a founder who's got bugs. They're critical path bugs. It's embarrassing. They're spending. The founder is going to know exactly how much he or she is spending to acquire new users, and then if they're, I don't know, churning or the conversion rates are lower than they think they should be because of these bugs, they could easily put a price tag on fixing each one of these bugs. If so, you could say something like, all right, so we can do three options. Let's do this. Here's a project. You've got all these critical path bugs and it's costing you money. Here are three possible projects we could do. One is we could investigate where all of the bugs are, merely identify them, set up no testing, nothing. We just find all the ones that we can find as a baseline. Maybe this is a roadmap. Maybe it's part of the project. And you say, okay, and then you just know from experience, you have a lot of experience, and you just know that you could have an option two that for more money, we could cut the critical path bugs in half with manual and automated testing that is just bolted on after the fact. And then as a third tier, you could say, we can set things up in a way that is going to remove 90% of critical path bugs, or maybe 90% of bugs across the whole system, or whatever based on your experience you're able to do once you know where the bugs are. And you could price them such that the buyer can make a value-based decision about which one of those things they want. So maybe identifying all the bugs is $10,000, and maybe setting up manual and then automated testing bolted on after the fact is, I don't know, $22,000 or $50,000. And and that's to cut the bugs in half, and then to get the bugs down by 90% or maybe 95%, let's say, it's $150,000. So if you present the person with these three prices, 10,000, 50,000, and 150,000, they could very well say, they want zero bugs, of course, but if they look at the prices and they're like, okay, this is a credible offer, I believe that they can do this, I just want to write a check and make it go away. I can write a check for $50,000 right now, and cutting the bugs in half, I can justify that because if cutting the bugs in half will give me a positive ROI on that investment. Is that tracking? Is that realistic? Does that make sense?
Yes, this makes sense in the scenarios where a prospect is coming to me with a whole sort of issues. Yes, right.
Mm-hmm. And do people also come to you like sort of blue sky, there's no product yet, and they want you involved from the very beginning?
No, I also really don't actually support that idea
Mm-hmm.
because unless and until they have tested their MVP,
Mm-hmm.
and they have probably a few beta customers, I think
Okay.
that is where probably they should start investing.
Okay. So that to me, this is a very common scenario, even with software development, where it would be smart to hire a really high qualified professional as early as makes sense. But in reality, the people who have the really expensive problems, which are the ones that we can deliver high value to, are the ones that got themselves in over their heads, and now they've got something to lose. So people who have gone beyond an MVP and they're doing serious revenue on something that is stuck together with chewing gum and baling wire, and now they're like, oh no, we've got all these critical bugs. We spent all this time in enterprise sales to land these. We've got these 5 big Fortune 500 clients. We finally, after 6 or 12 months, we finally closed the deals. They're $1 million a year each in licensing fees. And now their users are getting all of these show-stopping critical path, but maybe not showstoppers, but they're getting these critical path bugs that are embarrassing. They're complaining. We're afraid we're going to lose Home Depot or Staples as a client, and we spent thousands and thousands of dollars to get them in the first place. Maybe they're going to sue us to get out of the contract. This is a person who has a very expensive problem, and you probably can't come in and fix it the way they want. You probably can't come in and fix it the way you want. But if you can improve the condition significantly, in their opinion, then they're going to have money to invest in that. They're going to want to spend, they're going to want to write that check to, say, cut the bugs from 10 to 5. That's going to be worth a certain amount of money to them. So is that, how similar is that to your experience? Are you typically getting contacted by people who have gotten themselves in over their heads and they've got paying customers and they're afraid they're going to lose them because they're embarrassed by these critical path bugs? Or is it more people who are just proactive and are just, they just know, or maybe they're former software developers and, they're technical founders and they just know they need good automated testing. And so they're just smart and they're bringing you in before they have an actual problem.
Right. So I think 60% of the customers are the one who want to start the testing activities,
Mm-hmm.
and these and I've seen a few prospects where they have really were struggling with their QA. So there was this one customer of mine whom still advising, is where they wanted to shift from a premise based product to a multi-tenant product, and along with that they had loads of issues the way we are discussing right now. So
Yeah.
so these type of customers are like 25-30%, but most of the customers are one who want to have testing activities started. Yeah, but the main challenge is even for those inquiries, probably quite a few founders are not aware about QA is just not doing some manual testing or doing some automation testing. It covers the entire spectrum, right from the requirement phase. So
So you're saying
that
60% of the people that come to you know they need QA, but they think it's just like someone sitting at a computer, like playing with the app.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So I'm a little bit, and can you describe like the size on some dimension of a company like that maybe the most recent one that came to you? Like, how many employees do they have? Do they have an MVP? How many customers do they have, if so?
Yeah. So typically it is like they are already like at least 18 to 24 months into that product. So already they have few customers as well. So obviously they are past their MVP stage,
Mm-hmm.
and the strength is like on an average 25, 30, 20 to 25, I would say, on average company strength.
Like a number of employees.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good. And but they don't have any QA people, or they've been doing it informally.
Okay. For companies whose the strength is around like 10, 12, there hasn't been a single QA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for 20 odd people, like a single QA person, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And they're just doing manual. It's not like the developers don't have automated tests built in.
The developers have few of their unit tests, but definitely no end-to-end or integration or automated tests.
Mm-hmm.
And the main problem I have seen is they don't have a structured way of ensuring quality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so uh, it is a bit disorganized the way the testing happens.
Okay.
Probably they don't realize it that it can be done in a more organized way. So,
Mm-hmm.
but when I look at it, okay, this can be improved in
Mm.
to a lot better way.
Okay. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but it sounds like for 60% of your leads or customers or whatever prospects, there might be appetite for you to just organize set up, help them hire a couple more QA people or whatever. Like here's what it would look like if it were organized. I don't know if I'd call it a roadmap, but it has a similar function where you would come in and they would say, okay, we need, can we get, I don't know, like some of your employees to come in and just supplement the one person we have doing manual testing. We need like 4 more people like that. Can you do that? And you'd say, no, we don't do that. We do something that we believe is much more effective and a better investment long term, but it's a little bit more set up front or whatever the difference is. And if they're interested in hearing about that, then you could say, well, we could do a sort of diagnostic and and present findings and recommendations based on your situation. That costs $3,000, and it will give you really an organizational map of or a process map or whatever of what it would look like in a perfect world, and then how I would implement the pieces of this and in what order if we were to work with you ultimately. And just give them like a customized plan for building out a robust QA function. Do you think people would be interested in that? Like this particular segment?
Yes, very much so. Like uh, 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 basically, if they realize the value they can get, I don't think they would say no to this.
Okay. And ultimately, again, maybe unrealistic, but probably all of them want 0 bugs in production, right? I mean, I feel that's probably pretty obvious. And so if the conversation could be, if they're saying like, well, no, we just want 5 more people like Alice to be testing the interface. You say, well, industry wide, that's only going to get you to 50% or 20% reduction in bugs, especially with no process in place. It'd probably be less than 50% reduction, which means that half of all bugs are going through to your customers. And you can do that. If that's good enough, then just go hire more QA people. You don't need us. But if you want to get that number down closer to 90% reduction, where, you're getting whatever the number, it's like you're getting maybe 1 bug in production a month or a year. If you want that, then you need to take a more sophisticated approach, a more thorough, organized approach to it. And that's where we come in. It would start with this QA roadmap product. It costs this much money. And at the end of it, you'll know exactly which steps to take next and in what order, and roughly how much it would cost, at least order of magnitude, so they could prioritize, and do the low-hanging fruit stuff first, the best bang for the buck stuff first. And presumably they would be highly likely to hire you to do that stuff, even though you'd be the most expensive option. So that feels like, but okay. So does that, am I explaining that well?
Yes, perfectly. And it is just not like reducing the bug. It is like reducing the time. So and that is also very very valuable. So just imagine like if any feature get delayed by say 2 months, and we have a proper setup. If the QAs are trained to test in the particular way,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can deliver that feature in just 1 month, okay, say 2 sprints instead
Mm-hmm.
of 4 sprints,
Mm-hmm.
the value is enormous.
Right. Yes, that I totally agree. I would hammer on both of those things because, especially if they're, in a situation where they're either, almost certainly either paying salary to the dev team, the engineering team, or they've got some outside agency doing the dev. And so like cutting cutting the dev burn in half
Yeah.
is dramatic, right? So that would be another great selling point, I would think, for your assistance. So okay, so the project. So if we're going to get back to value pricing, the
Mhm.
project would be, you'd first do this roadmap as an independent thing. It would just be priced the same for everyone. There'd be no value pricing. You'd just slap a price on it that you'd be perfectly happy or very happy to get paid to do, and that's it. They just go, they buy it, don't buy it, you don't care. There's no discussion really. It's just like, hey, here's the sales page. If you want to get on the phone, we can, but I'm just going to tell you what's on the sales page. So they buy that, they do that, and then you'd present them with a 3-option proposal for, it could possibly be phases of implementation, or it could be 3 completely different levels of service where, the first level is sort of least attention from you. The middle level is, you know, it's kind of like, well, something like, oh, you've got one QA person, and the QA person and maybe the CTO or something like that, or the COO, I'll coach them on working their way through this roadmap. Maybe that's like an option one. And, you know, help you with hiring people because they're going to staff out the QA team instead of bringing in outsourced assistants. Maybe level two is, you know, some combination of your team doing the really tricky stuff and while they're building out their team and doing the stuff that they can do, implementing their procedures as recommended by you. And maybe the top one is where you go all the way back to, or you start getting involved with new features at the requirements phase, and you start to bake in this QA approach the way that you think it should be in a perfect world into any upcoming features from the get-go. And the prices for those three things would be, you know, if it's based on value, it would depend on how much that stuff is worth to the client. If it's not based on value, you would just price them all really high. So like way more than you would normally ask for. And then if they say no, then fine, they go to someone cheaper. If they say yes, then you've got a lot of profit to work with, and any unexpected scope increases you won't care about. It's nothing to worry about.
Right. Yeah.
So
Um,
then it's not. So we would completely get away from the month to month thing, because there would be the success metric would be we got to the end of the roadmap, or we accomplished the desired outcomes of this option on the proposal. You know, like say it's the, you know, building out their team or something. Then, you know, it would be you would want to have a progress metric that you could control, but it would be like, oh, you know, you will be done when there are, you know, you've got 5 people set up and this portion of the roadmap has been implemented, and maybe you think it's gonna take $1,000 worth of hours to do that, or let's say $5,000 worth of hours to get that done, and then you just double it and you say, okay, $10,000, and we'll get you this far down the roadmap, or we'll participate in the journey through the roadmap at this level. So that wouldn't be value priced. You're just like doubling what you would normally charge and hoping that the value was there, and they would just say yes or no. But you know, that's not my favorite. My favorite would be if by the end of the roadmap, you have learned that there's multiple $1 million contracts at stake. And I've literally seen this with people who have some sort of software product that is supposed to be presenting some kind of information from like a national sports league. So let's just pick one, like the NFL. Maybe you've got the rights in Brazil to, I don't know why people would watch American football in Brazil, but let's just say you've got the rights to broadcast the NFL, or you've got the rights to broadcast the NFL games in Brazil over this app that you've created. And it's a huge deal. You're getting tons of money from it, but the NFL insists on some level of quality assurance because they don't want any brand damage on them from some app, small app developer in Brazil. And they'll sue you to death if there's lag, or it's just a crappy experience or whatever. So someone like that would very much be interested in investing $100,000 or $500,000 in a reliable QA process that they felt like would allow them to uphold their obligations with this huge organization. So it's not unreasonable to imagine finding someone who really, really is going to lose a lot of money from bugs or delayed feature releases or whatever the case may be, and just say, hey, you just come in all confident, like, I've been doing this for 20 years at a high level. We've got the expertise, we've got the team. You're not going to like it because it's not just manual testing. It's much more involved than that, but we can promise these outcomes, and it's really expensive. So, if it's worth it to you, great. And then you can set a price based on value and then reverse engineer your scope to fit the prices.
Yeah, this makes sense. But I want out, like, the way it happens in software products is like we start with an engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the features get built on every quarter on quarter basis. So apart from like doing QA for the new features, right? So there are some regular QA tasks. So it could be like regression testing. It could be like testing some bug fixes and all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm a bit still confused. Like, for example, say I provided a value-based pricing for say feature A, but at the same time I have some these daily regular task of some doing some regression testing. So
Mm-hmm.
how to price these regular tasks?
Yeah, that sounds like, so in other words, if I could rephrase that, it's like you're doing this new groundbreaking work where you're creating new processes and testing not approaches, but you're implementing this architecture, this QA architecture. And then there's the ongoing running of the machine that you created, right?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's support and maintenance.
yes, that's
And
supported.
right. So that's low margin work. Nobody wants to pay for that, really. It's certainly not as exciting or critical. So there's really two things you could do. One is to price that so that it's so expensive, price that independently on a
Hmm.
monthly basis in a way that is more expensive than hiring someone to do it manually. And that will put incentive on them to actually just hire an employee to run the machine so you don't have to run the machine. And while they are hiring, you're getting paid very well to run the machine, the support and maintenance. And then when they hire someone, it could be part of the service is that when they find someone, or maybe you help them find someone, and they bring on that employee, and and you part of the handoff. You guys help with the handoff, train the person, and that would justify the premium they're getting paid for the support and maintenance. Because it's not just doing it; it's also bringing on and training, onboarding, and potentially even managing these new QA employees that you would be bringing on for them. So
Yeah, yeah.
that would perhaps be a way to do it, but I wouldn't value price it. Like, hey, if you want us to do, if you want us to mop the floors for you and fix the broken windows, it's going to be super expensive because we're the architect. We're not the janitor. We're not the handyman. And you can just move upstream as a business by pricing
Hmm.
the low end work, more expensively than they could just find someone to do it and incentivize them to build a team that can do that daily maintenance work. I mean, if they've already got 20 employees, they probably should have a couple of more QA people if it's a daily task. It would probably save them money, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And but eventually, once the company implements the QA practices, and it is a continuous improvement process. So it's not like overnight everything would fall in place. So it would take like 3 months, 6 months, or even like 12 to 15 months to reach at a very good maturity level. And in fact, once
So,
the
sorry,
company
to reach a what level?
to reach a very good QA maturity level. What I mean to
How would you know when it was mature?
Okay, where the company releases are predictable,
Hmm.
happening on time,
Hmm.
the number of critical bugs
Hmm.
are minimalistic, in fact
Hmm.
zero in production,
Hmm. Yeah, there's your
and
success. That's your success metric for the project.
yes,
Hmm.
that is my success matrix.
Hmm.
Then all the QA tasks are happening on time. So what I mean by that is like most of the companies are focusing on completing the dev implementation task
Hmm.
and writing say updating the automated place that's kept on the back radar or in the backlog.
Hmm.
But if you do both these activities in parallel at the same time,
Hmm.
right, then even the maintenance part, like doing the regressions and bugs, obviously would be less. These activity, the time spent on these activities will reduce drastically, and in fact, it will go into an automated mode.
Hmm.
That is what I mean to say. So
Oh, it would. It would become purely automated.
yes, the regressions and all that process can become can go into an auto mode.
Okay, so they wouldn't need employees to keep doing it on a daily basis.
They won't require employees with really great expertise in that case, or they can manage it with lesser number of employees.
Okay, so I would just so as you are doing it, as your team is doing it manually to reach the success metric, it would just be something you did under the promise of the project. So it would just be, I would just lump it into the price. But I think the thing that is usually a disconnect for someone, because you said at the very beginning, it's like, well, I don't know how many hours it's going to be for that stuff,
Yeah,
even though you said it averages 200, so you kind of do, but
yeah,
you just price it so high that that was fine.
right.
And then at the end, this is the success metric at the end is all of those things you listed. You're at a very high maturity level with your QA process. We designed and built a system that is working, and now with the intention of leaving. Like, you don't want to be there forever doing this low level running the
Yeah,
machine work. You want to get out of there and go get another giant client.
exactly.
Yeah. So for value pricing, you want it to have an end. It has to have an end. So the end
Okay.
is you've reached this, pinnacle of QA maturity system. And it looks like this, like your existing team is able to like run this system. The bugs are down to zero, so all the things you listed, and that's going to be $1 million. If that's what you want, it's $1 million.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you don't care about 200 hours a month for an extra 3 months or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense. Surely.
Um, okay, so what do we talk about so far? We talked about road mapping to decrease uncertainty at the beginning. We talked about finding clients who have a very expensive problem, like for whom bugs in production are really, really bad. And you guys presenting yourselves as like hey, if you want someone to just do, if you want bodies to do manual testing, we are not your people. If you want to have a mature QA organization that allows you to release features twice as fast and collapse your bugs in production by 95%, yeah, we're the people. Like, it's gonna be expensive, but it's gonna be worth it. You can justify the investment because you've got these really either really big customers that are thinking about leaving, or you've got these contracts with big companies that have these that were hard to get and are going to cost you millions if you lose them. So the trick, I guess, with any value pricing is finding people with really, really expensive problems, because then the value is super high, and then there's a lot more leeway between your costs and their value, so you can set prices all over the place and everybody's happy as long as and as long as you know what you're doing, which you do. So cool. Then there's one other thing that I wanted to touch on. You mentioned that sort of 60% of your startup clients are in this category where they have maybe 20 employees. They've got some customers. They're a little bit beyond MVP, but they're not way into a monolithic, it's not Salesforce, right? It's not this giant thing. So what about that other 40%? Let's talk about that for just a minute. The 40% that's in over their head, what do they look like?
Okay. So the other like 30 or 40% are the ones who have existing QA problems. Okay, so either they want to do some transformation of their product. That is one. Okay.
Mhm.
Second is they have this enormous issue with their quality, and they don't have a clue how to how to go about it,
Mhm.
how to fix it,
Mhm.
uh, right? And they just probably think that having a separate QA testing team, hiring and doing some automation stuff, they can overcome this challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But they think that's just going to be a bunch of bodies like doing manual tests, or are they at least more sophisticated than that?
They understand that yes, automation testing is required,
Mhm.
and in fact, quite a few the decision makers, they are very, very specific. Okay, I want to have you coming in and like implementing automation tests. Okay,
Mhm.
so and they think that like automating the testing process would would solve their problems because automation would reduce time. It will catch bugs in the earlier phases. But
Hmm.
uh, and I have like done this type of work before I came to know about you, right?
Hmm.
But now I'm positioning in a different way. I'm saying that just doing this work is not sufficient. This is nothing but handwork. But
Hmm.
what we have to first clear is the thought process, the mind, and first we have to understand why the mess is there in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
And these are just tools. And in fact, after like going through your articles and through your podcast, I just reflected back the way we were the way I was working in the corporate world for the big finance companies, like where for example the trading platforms in these big finance companies, where for every minute or a second there were like $1 million transactions, and we cannot afford even a major bug over there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So the systems were in place. The thought process was correct, and this is the exactly what is missing in some of the companies like I've encountered, especially in the startup world,
Mm. Yeah, I mean,
right?
the problem with the startup world is it's going to be harder to find companies that have a really expensive problem,
Yeah, right.
right? Like the one you just described, like $1 million a second is like, okay, you don't want that down. That's worse than Amazon being down on
Yeah,
Black Friday.
yeah.
So,
Just think about a Facebook IPO getting launched, and if your system just goes haywire,
right,
right? You can understand the
right,
enormity of the thing.
right. So for someone, you or anyone listening who wants to create leverage in their business through value pricing, it's just one way to price. It's just one way to create leverage. But if you want to sort of increase your income, your profitability, value pricing is a good way to do it.
Okay.
The thing that is it is dependent on though is finding bigger and bigger expensive problems. So, and what does that mean? It usually means bigger customers. It usually means customers that have more budget, more at risk.
Hmm.
They have like the buying power needs to be there. If the buying power is not there, there's nothing they can do.
Right.
So, the my max price formula is like desire times money divided by options. So they need to have a really intense desire for the outcome that you can provide, quicker releases and fewer bugs. They, and that is going to be multiplied by how much money they have. So if this desire is at a 10, money is at a 10, that's like a huge numerator, right? Like a giant number. And then that's divided by options. So you've got this giant number in the numerator, but it's divided by the number of options they have. So if they're willing to spend $1 million to solve this problem, to satisfy this desire, but they perceive that they have 100 options, then somebody in that list of 100 options is going to undercut someone else and someone else and someone else, and they're going to be able to get a better price for what they perceive to be the same outcome. So uh, I guess the other trick, so you need to find bigger and bigger companies that have more and more expensive problems, and you need to be perceived as the only option or one of the very few options. And that's 100% positioning exercise. So they come across your name. They ask around. Oh, I've got this giant problem. They ask around. Everybody points to you. So you got to talk to these guys. And they're like, all right, let's talk to them. And then you show up and you're like super credible and have tons of experience. And you've got maybe this road mapping thing that they could sort of test the waters with. Like, $5,000, that's nothing. Yeah, let's do that. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, these guys really know what they're doing. These guys and gals really know what they're doing. But then you say, all right, well, here's the roadmap. We can give you a proposal. The options are going to be 100,000, 220,000, and 500,000, and the outcomes at each option are going to look like this, that, and the other. And they're going to be like, yeah, we can make this happen. When can you start? So that's what that looks like.
Yeah, yeah, right. I think you did just hit the nail on its head with this value proposition. One more thing, if I may add,
Sure.
even for startups, like uh, probably they have their targets on site. Say 1 year down the line, they have to go beyond Series A or Series B. They want to achieve those numbers, the MRR or ARR,
Mm-hmm.
whatever those numbers are, right?
Right.
right? And if I can educate them that implementing this process, okay, maybe through an initial roadmap, uh, will that work?
That's the opposite of what I do. Like when I hear someone say educating the client, it sounds like trying to convince them that there's
Okay,
value in what you do. What I would rather, I do the opposite is try and talk them out of hiring me. So
okay.
they say, we really need to bring you in. And you'd say, why? It's like, oh, we've got too many bugs. And you'd say, so what? Like, is that costing you any money? Well, it's just embarrassing. Like, well, that's not that bad. Like, just get used to it. Like, it's going to cost you 100 grand minimum to work with us. Like, or, whatever. You can just throw numbers out, or you can just say, well, we're
Uh,
really expensive. Like, we really work with people who've got real problems. They're not just embarrassed. And you need to have the client convince you and themselves that there's a connection between what you do and those downstream MRR numbers that they want. There's like a million ways that you and I could imagine, at least a dozen ways you and I could imagine a mature QA system being in place might lead to those numbers. But what we think doesn't matter. The buyer needs to convince you that they see a connection between what you do and the outcome that they want. And you need to be confident that you can do your part, like that they're not crazy. So, in your content marketing, maybe if you're blogging or if you YouTube channel or a mailing list or a podcast, that's where you do your educating. That's the
mm,
educational content marketing. That's where you do your educating. And then people come to you and they've already drunk the Kool-Aid. They already know, like, this is what we need to do. We need to have a mature QA process. Otherwise, we're just amateurs. We're just farting around. We're just taking giant risks. And, and so if you want to educate people, do it for free at scale with your content. But once you get into a sales, like a prospect comes in, I 180 degrees different. Like, why not hire someone like me? Why not just get two more people like Alice to just manually test it? Why not take that feature out? Why not just cut that whole module out, start from scratch? Why not do all of these other cheaper things, all the other options, all the other alternatives? Why not do any of those other things? And they need to tell you why they think none of those things will work, why they have no choice but to hire you. And then you
mhm.
take notes on what they said and you put it right in the proposal. You're like, currently, you've got a successful MVP, you've got X dollars of MRR. You want to, in the future, you want to quadruple that, but you can't because you keep sending these massive bugs to production. It's taking longer and longer to release features. Your investors are getting more and more impatient. You brought us in because we were recommended by your colleague for whom we delivered a huge home run. And here are 3 ways that we could possibly work together. So they need to connect the dots for you about why it would make sense for them to invest the money. Like, I think of it like when I'm in the meeting, I think of one way to think of it is like the client is like your mom and you don't want to take her money unless this is really going to be a good investment, and then maybe you'd consider doing it. Or another way to look at it is that the buyer, let's say it's the founder of the startup, that the founder is the founder and you are their VC or their board member. And they need to convince you why they should spend a bunch of money to bring in a professional QA consultant. So don't think of yourself as the person who's trying to land the deal. Think of yourself as the person who doesn't want to spend the money and make them convince you why it might be a good idea. And then the proposal is just like you just write down what they said, and they'll almost definitely say if the prices are anywhere near in the ballpark, they're definitely going to do it.
I think I'm not perfectly in sync with what you're saying. Yeah, I think that's how it should be. If you want to go the value-based path, surely.
Yes,
Yeah,
if that's the way you want to go,
yeah.
right? You could do a whole other thing that was like, I mean, we don't need to get into it. It's much easier to understand though. You could get into a whole thing of just doing these roadmaps and, renting out your team by the month for at a very high profit and just do like a productized service where you're like a support and maintenance company where you handle Q. I mean, I don't think you want to do that, but you could. People probably do it. Just have a productized service and never touch value pricing again and just work on optimizing your cost structure so that the monthly money that you're bringing in from these QA jobs is just super profitable. That'd be another way to do it. Or you could just another route you could go is just training organizations and your current competitors on your, proprietary process, like your formula for creating a QA team. You could do is create a certification program. So there's like a million things you could do with the expertise that you have.
Yeah, yeah,
But
correct.
if you want to stay in the consulting space and do high ticket value priced sort of projects, then that's what we talked about today.
Yeah, I think that was great. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Cool. Great. Any other questions before we wrap up?
No, I think I got most of them covered. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, where can people go to find out more about you? Maybe they know someone who needs a mature QA system put in place.
It's pristineprotech.com.
Cool. I'll put that in the show notes in case it's hard to spell.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I will ping you that.
Okay, great. All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye.